Okay, so today I wanted to talk about detox teas or Teatoxes. They're really everywhere from Instagram and social media to really popular tea places and chains. So I really wanted to dive right in and let you know the facts and if it is something that you should choose to do. So there are many different brands, and now I'm just going to preface this with I'm not affiliated with any brand at all. These are just ones that are easy to find online, ones that people might know about. So in Skinny Mint in particular, I looked at their detox tea. They do have other teas, but the ones I looked at included the Morning Boost. So we had green tea in there, yerba mate, nettle leaves, dandelion, and guarana. And then we had the Night Cleanse, which had ginger root, lemongrass, peppermint, hawthorn berries, licorice, orange, and senna. So the idea being it's usually a 28-day cleanse. You would have one tea in the morning and one tea in the evening. So I just wanted to start kind of breaking down some of the common ingredients. So yerba mate has caffeine. So it has been shown to be beneficial for mental function, obesity, high cholesterol, constipation, fluid retention, and low blood pressure because it can bring blood pressure levels up. And contraindications, so we don't want to have heavy alcohol use with this. It's contraindicated in anxiety. Oftentimes, things that contain caffeine will be contraindicated in anxiety because they can give you heart palpitations and really exacerbate those feelings of anxiety. Bleeding disorder, so the way it's processed has actually been shown to slow clotting. So if you do have a tendency to bleed or you are on anticoagulants, something like warfarin, this can actually worsen a bleeding disorder. It can interact with some medications, and this is one of the things I wanted to highlight with respect to these teas is that just because it's natural doesn't make it safe. Some of these herbs can really actually have interactions with medications, and in this case of this herb, it's going to interact with stimulants. Well, because it is a stimulant based on the caffeine, it's going to interact with certain antibiotics. It's going to interact with Pepcid or Zantac, so interacting with heartburn medication. So, for example, if you were taking Pepcid or Zantac at the same time as having this tea, technically this can increase the side effects of caffeine because this medication can slow the breakdown of caffeine. Another thing that's interesting, a lot of people are on estrogen or birth control pills. These in general decrease the breakdown of caffeine. So if we're increasing the amount of caffeine we're consuming, estrogen and birth control pills can actually increase the side effects of having too much caffeine. And then medications for depression and schizophrenia can interact with this, as well as nicotine because it is a nervous system stimulant as well. Nettle is really quite a safe herb. It's really excellent for allergies. It's anti-inflammatory. It decreases blood pressure. It really helps with swelling and water retention. So it's a diuretic, so it's going to make you pee more. And this is common in a lot of these detox blends and recipes because of that factor, because it helps you pee more and get rid of maybe excess water retention. Dandelion, again, is great to support the liver. It is a lighter, more gentler laxative, so it helps you become regular with your bowel movements. It can help with digestive function in that it is a carminative, so it helps you break down food. It again helps with water retention and swelling, so it does have diuretic properties to it that will increase your peeing. Interactions, so it can interact with drugs that reduce blood sugar, so that's anything that you would take if you had diabetes. Drugs processed through CYP1A2 and CYP2E. So I'm going to get to CYP1A2, but these are basically the way things go through the liver. They're metabolized by certain enzymes, and so dandelion is interacting with things that also go through these two enzymes. So it's going to reduce the metabolism of anything going through these enzymes. Contraindications, so people with a latex allergy could have a sensitivity to dandelion. Those with irritable bowel or stomach inflammation, it could make things a little bit worse for them. And then when we're looking at some of the drug interactions, so this is CYP1A2. So these are things that use that particular enzyme. And now there's a whole list. To the left here, I have some examples. So alozitron is usually prescribed in IBS. Zolmitriptan is used for the treatment of migraines, and melatonin actually goes through that pathway as well. So technically, if you were having dandelion at the same time as these things, it can reduce their metabolism and you could have increased side effects. Now, that can be not as bad or it can get bad depending on what the medication is. So, for example, melatonin, if we're reducing the metabolism of melatonin and you're having dandelion at the same time, it could increase the drowsiness that you're feeling when combined if melatonin is processing a lot slower. So, not a horrible side effect. Melatonin is pretty benign in that respect. But if you're looking at something a bit more intense, maybe you don't want it metabolized slower because you don't want those side effect potentials. Guarana fruit. So this is a Brazilian plant. It contains a range of stimulants. This is something that you've often probably heard of to be found in many energy drinks, weight loss over-the-counter products. It is rich in antioxidants, so it has caffeine, theobromine, tannins, and saponins, which is a variety of antioxidants. It's been shown to improve mental focus and energy, may boost metabolism, may stimulate the bowels. So again, we have that slight laxative effect, and that's kind of the whole reason for a detox is supporting the bowels, helping you go to the bathroom. Interactions, it can interact with blood thinners, so we've seen this before, and it can increase risk of bleeding. Side effects, so the side effects are usually due to the caffeine content, so heart palpitations, insomnia, headaches, seizures, anxiety, and there's no official dosage recommendations, and it isn't regulated. So the amount of guarana that is going to be in a product or in a supplement is not particularly regulated. So you could have actually more amounts of caffeine due to the amount of guarana than you bargain for in a product. So, getting on the topic of caffeine, looking at caffeine by weight is really important. So, if we look at coffee, approximately 3% by weight, guarana is 7.6%, a yerba mate is approximately 2%, and green tea is about 4.8. And then to put it in perspective, a cup of Tim Hortons medium coffee is about 205 milligrams of caffeine. So, you really notice that there's a lot more caffeine in something like guarana that, than in coffee or yerba mate. So the night cleanse, now really deep diving into this, they had herbs like ginger root, lemongrass, peppermint, orange, senna, hawthorn berries, and licorice. So I'm not really going to get into ginger, lemon, or lemongrass or peppermint because these are pretty common, they're pretty benign, they're really great carminatives, not a ton of interactions. The only thing I would say is you want to avoid peppermint if you have a tendency towards heartburn because peppermint can actually worsen heartburn. But ginger can be really good for digestion and nausea and a whole bunch of other things. It's anti-inflammatory. Orange peel is good. Again, it's a bitter, so it's going to help to break down food. It's going to help with digestion, inflammation. Senna, I'm going to get into a little bit later. With hawthorn berries, so this is namely a heart herb, so it's got a lot of its affinity towards the heart. So based on that affinity, it actually can interact with a lot of blood pressure medications. So we need to be really careful with if we're taking something like hawthorn, we need to make sure we're really evaluating our medications. Licorice is another one with respect to heart medications. It can increase blood pressure. So, if you have a tendency to high blood pressure, licorice is not something you should be taking, and especially has been shown to increase blood pressure in those taking the oral contraceptive pill, so birth control. Licorice has been shown to lower potassium levels. It can reduce serum testosterone. So I use licorice a lot in like a PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome type of situation. And then looking at the different forms of licorice. So licorice root is actually the plant. DGL is basically a form of the plant that takes out the component in licorice that raises your blood pressure. So if you have heartburn or something and you've been given DGL, not to worry, that won't increase your blood pressure. But if licorice is in a tea, it certainly can. Looking at senna, senna is a very interesting one because I find it used in a lot of these detoxes or these Teatoxes, and the reason being is it is really a stimulant laxative. So the laxative, excuse my spelling error right there, but its laxative effect is actually enhanced when it's combined with something like psyllium, so a bulky fiber. But it actually can create a dependency, senna, because it is a stimulating laxative. It isn't gentle. It can cause reduced absorption of food and drugs because it does reduce your transit time. So transit time is the amount of time that it takes for food to get through the digestive system. And if we are reducing that transit time, we're reducing absorption ultimately. So that becomes a problem if we're doing this often and we're taking medications or we're just trying to eat regularly. The other thing that can happen is potassium depletion, which can be a big problem with respect to heart health. So you really do have to be cautious with using this and not using it too often to create a dependency. Now, I looked at another one. This one is called Your Tea Canada. It is the tiny Teatox. Now, I actually really liked this one because a lot of now we do have hawthorn, which is something I mentioned before, and we do have a few other things in here, tangerine peel, the same as orange that is found in the other tea talks, but it's a lot of Chinese medicine herbs, and they were based on traditional Chinese medicine principles, why they added each herb. So I thought that was really neat and interesting. There were a few interactions that I noticed. Oolong tea, again, due to its caffeine content, so not really worse or better than any other type of tea, has caffeine. So again, if you're sensitive to caffeine, this is something to be mindful of. Hawthorn, like I mentioned, interactions with heart medications. Tangerine peel is really safe, no known drug interactions. Same with lotus leaf, no known drug interactions. Radish, not using with intestinal inflammation. And then the cassia seeds, don't use with low blood pressure or in diarrhea. So a few contraindications or interactions, but really actually quite safer, in my opinion, than the other blend. So, in general, you always want to make sure you're consulting with your healthcare provider. You never want to do any of these during pregnancy. And to add to that, you don't want to be doing any cleanses in pregnancy. And certain herbs are not recommended in breastfeeding. So, you really need to be careful about herbs that can dry up your milk supply or be transferred through to the baby. In this case, we had barley sprout, and this is actually contraindicated in pregnancy specifically because it can do that. And like I mentioned before, certain medications can actually interact. Just because it's natural doesn't make it safe. My opinion. So tiny tea actually might be a good option because there's a combination of a variety of the Chinese herbs. These can actually be hard to find on your own. So yes, it could be expensive, but this actually might be one that might be good to invest in. But otherwise, these detoxes are quite expensive. They can be about $40 a month average, and that's before shipping and all of those sorts of things. When you do a detox or a detox, it's not an easy fix. Everybody's looking for a quick fix, but this might be something that motivates you to start thinking about better choices. If you can commit to a detox for this month, then maybe next month you can really start changing your diet in a beneficial way. So I think that detoxes can be helpful. I don't think they're going to be a miracle cure that's going to make you lose 20 pounds or 10 pounds that you're not going to gain back, certainly, but they can really help to create lifestyle patterns and habits for the next kind of month and the following months. Every detox company recommends speaking with a healthcare provider and incorporating diet and exercise. A lot of these before and after photos are people incorporating diet and exercise with these teas. However, like I said, these teas could be the push you need, and everything is extremely user friendly. So if you're buying a detox, you know that that's all you're buying, that's all you need, and it actually might be easier for you. So the tiny tea with the Chinese medicine herbs might actually be good. The goals of a detox really are to support digestion, support the liver, and again, the tea usually just replaces other beverages. If we're drinking tea, we're likely not drinking pops, juices, lattes, other high sugar beverages. If we're doing the detox, we're likely doing some sort of detox in that we're not drinking alcohol. So maybe we're having a dry month and we're substituting that with a detox. That can actually be beneficial, just substituting that on its own. So I wanted to talk about a DIY detox. So what I would recommend if you really want to do a detox on your own, you don't want to spend the money and you want to not have any of the senna or the caffeine, including ingredients that I don't really love that come in a lot of these teas. So I would say remove all of the caffeine. First of all, if you feel like you need a little pick me up in the morning, you could go with a small black coffee or a green tea. And then I wanted to give you a list of herbs that you can look for when you're trying to do a detox. So things like dandelion, milk thistle, peppermint, ginger, nettle, and fennel are all really good for flushing out the system, helping with digestion, supporting the liver, and being really anti-inflammatory and really amazing. Now, I mentioned before, if you suffer from heartburn, avoid peppermint. And I would say start your day with warm water and lemon. That can really help move the bowels, move the liver, and then add a source of fiber. And honestly, that's really all you need for a really good detox. So the simplest detox, I gave you an example there. My favorite one is I really like traditional medicinals. Again, no affiliation, but they come with a lot of user-friendly, easy to find teas that are really great combinations. All of them are organic. But they have one that's everyday detox. Again, there's things like dandelion in there, there's milk thistle. Um, it's really gentle, but it doesn't have any sort of senna, any stimulating laxatives, or any sources of caffeine. So, my opinion, I would actually do an everyday detox plus a box of traditional medicinals ginger aid, which is literally just ginger, and that can be for your additional digestive support. So, with that, plus warm water and lemon, plus a source of fiber, that actually might even be a better detox in getting your bowels regular in a little bit more of a gentle way, as opposed to adding senna and really stimulating the bowels. And the cost. So we looked at the cost of the Teatoxes being around $40 for a month on average, and that can be in Canadian or US. It's the US ones are a little bit more expensive. And these are about $5 to $7 per box of tea. There's about 20 bags in each. So technically, even if you just bought the everyday detox, you could be doing your detox for 20 days for about $7. And if you even added on the ginger, you're looking at about maybe $15 maximum for the month. And then again, I always, for occasional use, traditional medicinals has a really great smooth move tea. So if you're finding yourself very constipated, this one does include senna. So I always say use this one sparingly because the bowels would get dependent on this stimulating laxative. So that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to get the bowels to move on their own with enough fiber and enough water and enough healthy foods to move things through. And having these stimulating laxatives every single day for a month can actually be really hard on the system. Beyond the detox, if we are doing some sort of detox or just trying to reset in the month, just aim to, with the detox, sweat every day, remove crap from your diet. So that is anything processed, anything inflammatory. Don't eat out, remove alcohol, remove refined sugar, that sort of thing, and aim for at least 2 liters of water a day. If you do that combined with those teas, that can really be a really beneficial reset in general. And then again, avoid combining caffeine sources. And I don't want to stress this enough, but there's nothing wrong with coffee per se. The amount of caffeine in coffee is generally a little bit more controlled than something like guarana. So try to avoid adding in mates with guarana, with green tea, because that adds up to a lot of caffeine. And it may seem like a more appealing choice than something like coffee, because coffee gets a really bad rap, but really it's not any better. And it really can actually cause anxiety attacks and irritability and digestive issues, and sometimes loose stool and heart palpitations, and people who are really sensitive. And then avoid anything that says senna because it's a stimulating laxative. We do not want to be stimulating that unless it is on occasion. So once in a while, not for a month detox. So that's about it. Um, Again, this video is just for educational purposes only. It's so important to speak with your naturopathic doctor when you're thinking about adding any herbs or supplements to your diet to make sure that it doesn't interact with any of your medications. And if you have any questions or concerns, you know where to reach me. You can follow me on Instagram at Dr. Laura ND, like me on Facebook, Dr. Laura Pfeiffer, naturopathic doctor. And don't forget, if you're not already in the Well Women tribe, to join it for lots of exclusive educational content. Thank you.